there's this one coming up here. We're going to point out on this lady here, watching her hands. I've paused it a bit now and they're a bit blurry, but what we're going to notice is how like she stops her hand and leaves it in a certain particular position. It's like in some of my other videos that, you know, when they know their hands, you know, fall into bits, they do what's called a clutch and touch, I say. Now, a clutch and touch is you'll see them squeeze their hand or squeeze the thumb or squeeze their other hand into the side of their hand, or sometimes they'll even like touch the back of the neck or their ear. Well, we're going to watch this lady now, this one. And we'll also catch a quick slit on this lady here. But what we're going to do is we're going to watch her hands and watch how her fingers are in a position, especially a little finger, because it's always them little pinky fingers that seem to go haywire when stuff's not going their way. Now let's have a watch.
What's going to happen to them? And it is so shocking that there's so many, as you were saying, worked for the British forces, right. And that's why they're being hunted by the Taliban, because they work for British forces.
She knows it's coming in a sec right now. Look at that there. Whose little finger has a mind of its own like that? Do you see her fingers then as well? Look at her ends of her fingers. You know what I'm saying? But look at that. Look at the little finger, how far it's separate from the rest of the hands. What I want to mention when it comes to, you know, human hands, our fingers, you know, don't necessarily work independently. If you, as a human, if you move your little finger, you can't hardly do it without moving the rest of, you know, some of your other fingers. And that goes for other fingers as well. When you try and move those fingers, you can't do it. That's because they're not meant to move independently, as they say. You know, if you move your little one, you can't not move some of your other fingers like some of these people do. And they seem to be able to move the fingers independently. Now, if we watch her hand here, it's in the same place. She's like stuck it down under there because she knows that it's dropping a bollock. Now, this is what happens with them.
Trying and failing to get the translators out, and now people are coming over on these boats in which people drown. There, you know, incredible suffering, and really, it's fascinating, isn't it? Everyone said the whole point of Brexit was to stop immigration and to stop people using the health service. And these arguments.
Look at the bend on it. Can you see? Look at it there. That looks like a totally separate thing to the rest of her fingers.
They have, I would say, a legitimate reason to be.
And the other point that brought up in this is that some refugees are acceptable, i.e. Ukrainian ones, which understandably, yes, they are, but that does...
See, she's putting her... You see how they pulled off of her then? Let's just go back and watch her hand come up. Right.
I would say a legitimate reason to be...
They know it's happening because they have to touch something, you know. Plus, when we move his hands don't distort, same as that. And I know, like, I'm probably preaching to choir and shills here, and agents and snakes, but you know that I'm right, and I'm not the first one to point it out. I ain't invented this sort of thing. I've just put it into motion and into practice. But let's watch her hand turn again. And also notice as well, this is another thing that I've noticed, you know, like when you see the hands distorting, if you look at when they've got a piece of jewellery or something on their hand, the jewellery never distorts, it's always very, very bright. Now, if that were the case, it shouldn't do that, if that's genuinely their hand. I don't believe they want us to see this either, because unless they're doing it themselves, but I actually think that it's something that the camera picks up and they don't want to be seen with this sort of stuff, because it's just another thing, you know, for people to talk about and point out. Like the outline of a again, these people on telly with these fingers. I'm not saying some people with them are ordinary people, but there's a little bit of a, you know, a trend
Yes, they are.
with this sort of thing happening. See, she knows it's happening, that's why she's put her hands out of view, because they just look a mess.
A light on what happens if you come from Syria or Afghanistan? Why is your life?
If you notice their ears as well, where their ears attach and things like that, that's another thing to watch out for.
These are really challenging questions that Western countries, in particular ones like ours, are going to have to face increasingly.
Okay, let's move on to one of the other issues in the papers, and we've been talking about over the last few days, and that is the chaos that we've seen